Hey folks, welcome to another video in this series of levels of enlightenment using GitHub Copilot. The lessons that I learned across the last few months of using GitHub Copilot, and this video is dedicated to level 9, the last one in this series, so I do recommend checking out the other ones as well. And this is an interesting one because I named this one Be Smart. And the Be Smart part is think of outside of the box of what you can do with code, and then GitHub Copilot to be using large language models, AI, for your benefit as well. And it starts with having these kinds of conversations, learning from other people how they work with GitHub Copilot, because what we have seen is you give somebody Copilot, they start using it, and they start to rely mostly on suggestions that are there while you're typing. And those are pretty good, but you can get so much more out of GitHub Copilot. So that's why I added this in here. And as an example for that, let's quickly go to a demo where I still have the same code base. This is a REST API, and we have a list of planes because of course we went with the Copilot theme. And we have a REST method in here for getting all the planes in our list. Get a plane by an ID and post a new plane to add something to the list. Well, I could go in and hit enter and start typing and start implementing the rest of the REST API calls that we have in it. But I can also be smart and ask Copilot to help me with that. Create the other API methods to be compliant with RESTfulness. Let's see how good it is with that. You can see that I still am learning to fix all my typos while I'm using the chat. There's one of the other videos in the series that talks about that. But it starts to reason for me saying, hey, you're probably missing a put and a delete in here. A put to update one because the post is creating one and we need to delete. So this is already an extra step, a sort of enlightenment of, hey, I can just ask Copilot to do this for me. It looks at the changes or the code that we have around it. And then potentially I can just place my cursor where I want this and say, insert this on that location. And then of course the task is up to me to validate that the code actually works, that I can compile this, for example, and start creating unit tests for this as well. But you can see that it picks up based from the contexts that are there. We still have one reference that is used. I could have given it a planes model, for example, as well. If there's an extra fields in the object that it doesn't know about. But you can see that it nicely fills in saying, hey, we need to update the values of the plane and things like that. Well, this is the first step that usually people still get, that, hey, you can start asking it for things like this. And I've shown plenty of demos, and I'll add a link that you can search for, that you can use to find more about this. But then the next step is, for example, asking, hey, I want to write this script. Can you write the script for me? These are the parameters that I have for this. This is the file that I need, loop over that, and things like that. But then you can go even further. This goes back to the Be Smart part. And I've learned this from somebody else that was talking about, hey, what I've learned over the years is that you can go in, for example, and say, I need to, maybe you say, I need to write unit tests. And now my typing is really bad for this class. And can you implement that for me? Lots of typos. That's okay. Yeah, to write unit tests, you probably need these steps. We have the plane controller, we have the post, the update, the delete, all the methods that are right now there. So here's the test class for you. And it starts writing that out. Step 1, setting it up. Sets up 2 planes, I see. Proposed method in there. So it's really going okay. And I expect that there will be a point in time where it says, I can't give you any code anymore. This is the size of what I can do for you. This is already rather good. It says test the update method. So it's giving me at least one test for every class that I have in here, or for every method, I should say, that I have. Can you also write all the edge cases, all the tests for the edge cases? I'm searching for where Copilot really will start to explain, hey, I have a limited size of what I can do, so I'm stopping there, for example. As giving this planes controller, you probably need these tests as well. So you can see that it gave me a test by test of, hey, if you want to test this specific method, you could test this, but only a single test. And I'm trying to get more out of that from Copilot because I want to be as efficient as possible, of course. And it starts to add things. Okay, this is the setup, post method, edge case, returns a bad request. It's already going rather slow because there's a lot of IntelliSense happening, or I should say code highlighting. So that's constantly updating it in Markdown to make sure that we can actually read this in a good way. So that takes away a little bit of time. But you can see that Copilot is still giving me method by method basis. This is how you can implement it. It's super beneficial if you're exploring certain things, but if you want to be productive with that, you can become a lot more faster with this as well. Let's save this one. I think I already have a test class in here, for example, that already has something for this specific controller even in there. And I can still now go back and say, hey, this is the planes controller that I have, the file that I want to test. These are the tests that I already have. Implement the rest. And then potentially we'll still say either these are the missing tests that you have and it starts to rattle those one off, or even saying, hey, these are the first two that I can give you and then I don't have any extra size left in my context window or in my suggestions window. So you need to implement those yourself. And the whole context of being smart is then thinking differently of how you can get the most out of this. And as I said, somebody pinged me on that and said, this is how you can do that. What if I go in and I can even start out with a clean conversation, for example? That's not necessarily necessary in this case, but it is a good example of if you think differently about this, you can get this done pretty easily. What if I change the prompt that I have to write the missing unit test for the hashtag file, place controller test based on the implementation in hashtag file. I'm being more descriptive, so I'm already smart because I know Copilot will pick up from those nudges of you need to use these files. Dot, just to make it more sensible for me, give me only the unit test method headers. I think that's a good description. So instead of asking for give me everything in one go, which I know it can't do, I can just ask, give me all the headers that I need. And it says, okay, these are the, 1, 2, 3, 6 different methods that I would do there. Does that list also include outliers and edge cases? So we can reiterate again, but this is an example of being smart and knowing that there's limitations in the system and trying to get around those these things as well. I could go still with the previous solution and then implement each test one by one, but I can also copy and paste the entire method handlers in there and use that to trigger Copilot for the next setup by just hitting enter behind every line that we have in here and let it then implement that entire method for me. So that's what I'm trying to convey with be smart. Think of new ways that you can use Copilot. I already mentioned the video of adding more and more information to your prompt and letting Copilot do more of the work for you. But if there's limitations that you run into, be smart. Use those hashtag files that we have shown in a previous video. Think about different ways that are there and definitely share that as much as possible. I learned so much from other people using Copilot where it just all of a sudden clicks in my head and says it sinks in. Now I can get more out of Copilot and get more, get it to do more for me as well. So with that, we're at the end of this series of different levels of enlightenment using GitHub Copilot. I hope that you learned something new from these as well. Let me please know which those things are. You can ping me in the comments, for example, or find my social media from my blog. I'm very curious to see what you have learned from this series. And what extra tips and tricks are there? Very happy if I can add the 10th video and the 11th video to this one as well, because that means I learned something from you as well. But this is definitely an outreach to you. If you have something you say, hey, I've learned this as well, this is a neat trick, share that, then we can all benefit from that as well. And with that, thank you so much for being here. Until the next one.